Number 10. Dani Alves. Let's start off with perhaps the most recent of these scandals. Anyone that remembers the recently past glory days of Barcelona would remember the contributions of some of the most prominent members of that multiple title-winning team. We all remember the likes of Lionel Messi, Xavi, Iniesta, Neymar, and co., but many will also remember the days when Dani Alves would race down the right wing so that he could lend his support to some of the previously mentioned names. Considered to be one of the best right-backs in the world in his prime with his unprecedented 43 titles, there are few that could rival the prowess of Dani Alves at right-back. Alas, when his playing days came to an end, he would have to deal with the scandal of sexual assault, to the shock of everyone in the football world, because Dani Alves was one of the most beloved players at the time. Even by rival fans, Dani Alves would even do time for this crime after being found guilty of assaulting a Spanish woman in December 2022 by Spanish court in February 2024. All pleas of innocence seemed to be stumped by the evidence presented before the court of law, even when Alves claimed that the sexual encounter was consensual. Although he was sentenced to 4.5 years in prison, along with fines, he is currently out on $1 million bail. Whatever the case may be going forward, Alves will have to deal with how he marred his career and reputation with his own actions. Number 9. Gambling scandal. The recent conclusion on the Lucas Paqueta gambling case highlights how gambling has actually become a bit of a problem with the players that take part in the modern game. Sports betting proved to be a huge problem for these people, especially as it seems to cost them a decent chunk of their career when they get caught. Just take a look at what happened to Ivan Toney. At the time his gambling problems came out, he was doing all he could to score the goals that would keep him and his team Brentford in the Premier League. Unfortunately for him, this led to the discovery of 262 breaches of the established betting rules that are put in place to prevent any issues for the players. After admitting to a majority of these charges, Toney had to subject himself to an 8-month ban from all footballing activities, as well as a $62,500 fine. Since then, he has made a move to the Middle East in order to further his career. Then there is Sandro Tonali, the former AC Milan midfield dynamite who now turns out for Newcastle United. Although he is still a fine talent, he must have been kicking himself for his negligent acts when he found himself in hot soup when his illegal acting activities were discovered soon after his transfer to Newcastle. Just like Toney, Tonali was betting against anything and everything. Some say he was even betting against his former clubs, if you can believe that. Understandably, he had to sit this one out for some time, as he would be forced to take a 10-month ban from all footballing activities. If this isn't a sad tale showcasing the downside of betting, we're not sure what is. Number 8. Robinho. Those of us who came to love football in the 2000s and early 2000s would tell you much we expected from Robinho. Touted by Pelé himself to be his heir, you just had to see Robinho go. He truly had it all, so much so that he found himself in Real Madrid at the age of 21. Unfortunately, just like his previously mentioned compatriot, Robinho would also find his reputation smeared by the ugliness that is sexual assault. This time, it was an Italian court that decided that it must punish the disgraced Brazilian and 5 other men of attracting the poor young women in a Milan nightclub back in 2013, when he was turning out for I Rossoneri. As such, it came as no surprise that he was sentenced to spend 9 years in prison. Although it should have even been more if he was truly guilty, Robinho has fought to establish his innocence on the matter, but the Italian courts won't relent. The matter even went to the Supreme Court of Italy, but Robinho's conviction was upheld. That said, he would have to live with the ignominy of being someone capable of such vile acts. Number 7. Joe Barton. Someone would actually have to tell us how Joe Barton has the guts to say the things he says online, considering all the nonsense he used to get up to during his playing days. What did he get up to on and off the pitch? Who else would go as far as stubbing a cigar on a teammate's eye during his playing days? Somehow this criminal act only cost him a fine. Well, that set a bad precedent for the Haitian native, because he would go on to assault Ousmane Dabo. This time he would end with a 6-match ban as well as a 4-month suspended sentence. It didn't take long for Barton to find himself in trouble, because within a year would be facing 6 months in prison after admitting to getting into a street brawl. At least this time, he would spend about 2 months in jail. Then there was his antics on the pitch. Remember what he did to Xabi Alonso back in 2009? What a brute! That got him a red card and a 3-match ban. Then there was the time that was sent off for elbowing Carlos Tevez during the last game of the 2011-12 season against Man City. Man United fans turn away now because we know what that led to at the end of the game. These are just some of the abhorrent things that Barton got up to during his playing career. What a bad egg. Number 6, Marcos Alonso. Although he isn't as terrible a character as Joey Barton, it must be said that Marcos Alonso, the former Chelsea and Barcelona player, was involved in one of the most notable football scandals of recent times. The interesting thing about this story is that this tale wasn't so well known until recent times. That said, that doesn't stop it from looking at Alonso a certain kind of way when it comes up. The sad event took place back in 2011. Back then, Alonso was looking to make his name with Bolton Wanderers. Unfortunately, it would be his fatal collision with a wall while going at speeds of 112 kilometers per hour when he was driving in his native Spain. Although he would come out fine, one of his passengers won't be so lucky. It's made even worse by the fact that Alonso had a blood alcohol level of 0.93 per milliliter. As you can imagine, the court saw it fit for him to do some time in prison for this reckless act, but before we knew it, the fine was commuted to a $68,000 fine as well as a ban on driving for 3 years. Truly unbelievable, especially as the passenger that lost her life in the collision was a 22-year-old woman. As such, you can imagine that this event has left a scar on him for much of his life. In the very least, he would be reminded not to lean towards recklessness ever again. Number 5, Patrick Kluivert. From one fatal car crash to another, we head over to the Netherlands, where Patrick Kluivert also had to deal with causing such damage to people's lives. We're talking about what happened to Patrick Kluivert back in 1995. Back then, Kluivert was considered to be a rising star amid the Ajax ranks. To many, he was making his way to the top as he scored goal after goal. However, there was a stop on the way when Kluivert had to deal with the effects of this car crash that he got into. Turns out that the crash was so catastrophic that it led to the death of the person in the other car. As you can imagine, it didn't take long for Kluivert to stand before the court of law to answer the charges coming to him. In time, he was found guilty of reckless driving, so he had to subject himself to 240 hours of community service as well as a 2-month suspended prison sentence. Despite how light this may seem in the grand scheme of things, we're sure that Kluivert was never the same, especially when he finds himself behind a steering wheel. Number 4, Franck Ribéry. Many of those who wonder why Karim Benzema played a limited amount of games for France would be shocked as to why. It all started with him, Franck Ribéry, and a young woman by the name of Zaya Dahar. Back in 2010, it was revealed that Benzema and several other French football players had gotten themselves involved in a case of soliciting sex from a minor. Turns out this minor was an underage sex worker we now know as Zaya Dahar. As you can imagine, the public was not too pleased when they heard this. Knowing France, heads had to roll, especially as Zaya Dahar was not of age yet. Hoping to clear his name after getting involved in the matter, Franck Ribéry did all he could to deny the allegations. He claimed that he didn't know that the young girl was underage. Fortunately, he and Benzema were cleared of all charges by a French court. Although the court of law cleared them, Ribéry and Benzema were considered to be something comparable to social pariahs for several years. Number 3, Lamine Yamal. One of the current shining lights in football today, everyone, even the Madrid haters, have watched in excitement as Lamine Yamal burst onto the scene. Did you see what he did while representing Spain during Euro 2024? Simply magnificent to say the least. With his future set, all Yamal wanted to do was enjoy coming of age. Following the long title-winning season that played out with his Catalan club coming out on top of La Liga, all the young man wanted to do was celebrate his 18th birthday party. But we guess we can only say that the world wasn't too pleased when they saw what he thought was fun. The young man almost went full Caligula with this birthday party. Turns out that the young man thought that it would be a great idea to hire entertainers with dwarfism to the party. I mean, we didn't cry when we saw that scene from The Wolf of Wall Street, but this party certainly cut a cord with disability rights groups. Maybe you guys can remember the wave of protests that erupted when the public heard about what Yamal got up to during his birthday party. Suffice it to say, these groups condemned the act as being discriminatory. There were even calls for investigations to see if any human rights were infringed during this birthday party. Interestingly enough, one of the performers did come out to say that they were never discriminated against during the event. In fact, they even claimed that they were treated with respect and were allowed to do their job as they pleased. Makes you think about these things. Maybe with time, Yamal would avoid such mistakes, and not only would it help his game, but it will also help him develop better as a person. Number 2. Karim Benzema. Another reason why Karim Benzema was limited to 97 caps for France was that notorious blackmail plot he was supposedly involved in. Just after he got over that matter with Frank Ribéry and Zaya Dahar, Benzema got into trouble again because he got involved with a plot to blackmail his France teammate Mathieu Valbuena. Apparently, someone had gotten hold of a sex tape that showed Valbuena in all his glory, and somehow Benzema got recruited to act as an intermediary between Valbuena and the blackmailers. Unbelievable stuff. As you can imagine, when the story came out, Benzema was in big trouble. That is actually the reason why he was given an indefinite exclusion from the French national team for more than 5 years. Only he can tell you how much damage this did to his career, because without him, Olivier Giroud and France would go on to win the World Cup. To make matters worse, Benzema was found guilty by the French courts of his complicity in the matter. This led to a 1-year prison sentence and a €75,000 fine. Sure, he was able to return to the national team, but at this point, you could say that he was past his prime. Furthermore, France seemed to have lost their winning edge, and as such, the French team had not been able to achieve the level of success that France enjoyed before he rejoined them. Following his retirement from the France national team, Benzema may actually look back at his activities with regret. At the very least, he could see how it cost him the achievement of winning the World Cup. Number 1. Mason Greenwood. Finally, we take a look at a scandal that rocked the footballing community. Back in 2019, Mason Greenwood was on the up as he started getting valuable game time for his local team, Manchester United. At the time, he was even getting England call-ups, and as such, his career truly had a skyward trajectory. In the end, it would all come crashing down when he got mired with the sexual assault accusations that would ruin his career for quite a while. In 2022, Greenwood started the year with the police at his door. Apparently, they were there to charge his to court for accusations of attempted rape, as well as coercive and controlling behavior. As if that wasn't bad enough, the disturbing photos of his girlfriend Harriet Robson, as well as the unsettling recordings of their interactions, proved that Greenwood wasn't the golden boy that everyone thought he was. Before he knew it, he was suspended by Manchester United, and he lost his sponsorships with the likes of Nike. He even got removed from FIFA video games. Talk about being exiled. Following this, Greenwood would spend a year in limbo as he was fighting the cases alleged against him. However, he would be able to breathe a sigh of relief when the courts would dismiss the case against him. Following this, he was moved on to Marseille, where he is doing well in a bid to reclaim the time lost on his career. He is even still with his girlfriend, and their kids live there with him. Despite this, it is tough to see if he would ever reach his projected height. As much as this is a tragic tale that disrupted a bright career, you can't help but feel that he is even lucky to still be playing football, as many women's rights groups frequently speak on his case. Hopefully, he has learned from his mistake, but that won't change how he was involved in one of the darkest football scandals of recent times.